What's up, everybody? It's Dave here with Comics Games Life, and this is my review and summary of the Venom story arc that comes out of Batman Legends of the Dark Knight issues 16 to 20. I know the Venom drug is more widely known to be used by the character Bane because that's what gives him his size and his strength, but Bane's first appearance was actually in 1993, and this story arc in Legends of the Dark Knight is in 1991. So this story actually predates Bane's first appearance, and we get to witness its effect on Batman. But before we dive into this story, I'd like to go ahead and give credit to those who were responsible in making it. So we have writer Dennis O'Neil, who's a Will Eisner Hall of Famer, as well as Jose Luis Garcia-Lopez, who's one of the artists, as well as another Will Eisner Hall of Famer, Russell Braun, who you may recognize some of his work in the Boys comic series by Dynamite Comics, and Trevor Von Eden, who was actually the youngest artist that DC had ever employed at 17, and he was still in high school, which is actually pretty cool. Not only that, but he co-created the character Black Lightning. So our story begins with Batman at the entrance to one of Gotham's sewers, and he's being held up by a foreman there who's telling him that he can't go down there. The sewers are filling with water and a cave-in is about to happen because you can see there's a torrential downpour, and Batman's response is simply, there's a child down there. That's the cool thing about Batman. It's like the guy could have told him it was filling with lava and Batman still would have responded the same way and he still would have went down there. So we see Batman traversing the tunnels, dodging fallen debris as the water's pouring in from every angle, and we see the little girl who's strapped to a chair in this hopeless situation. I love how the artist took their time in telling this part, and we see multiple panels of Batman making his way there. We see the girl and the water rising. So it's really building that tension straight from the beginning. And finally, Batman reaches her location, but there's rocks and boulders everywhere, and we see him tossing him out of the way. He struggles with some, and he uses his grit and motivation to just toss them aside. And there's one left, this one major boulder left, and he grabs hold and he tries to lift it, and nothing happens. And I think we've all been there in life when we try to lift up a heavy box or lift up a weight or something like that. And in that moment, we can tell, no, there's no way we can do this. Now, I don't know if that idea entered Batman's mind at the time, because we see him changing grips, getting it from another angle. All the while, the water is rising and this girl is getting more and more scared. And Batman's even diving under the water to see if he can get it that way, and nothing happens. And we're shown her lifeless face as she's drowned to death, and Batman just screaming her name. Now, I understand the necessity for this moment as it is the catalyst for the rest of the story, but I can't help but think that there wasn't something in his utility belt that he could have used to break down that rock a little bit, you know, like a small explosive or some sort of dissolving agent to melt the rock down to make it a little bit smaller, or a cutting tool of some sort. I mean, maybe Batman already thought of that, and the use of any of those tools could have possibly injured the girl or even killed her. Or maybe in that moment, he was just so overcome with the thought of just getting that girl that situation, like he just decided to man the whole thing. A similar feeling when you hear that story about the mother who lifts up the car to get her child out from underneath. Like, she didn't take any time or thought to come up with some elaborate mechanical way to get the kid out. It was just this miraculous will and hidden strength that she was able to lift the car as high as she needed for the child to get out. So that's where I believe Batman is. He's just in this caveman-like mindset where I just gotta move this big rock out of the way. But unfortunately, he fails to do so. So now we see him back at Wayne Manor, just fraught with guilt and anger, and he's replaying back in his mind that he was right in following the right clues to be able to find her. So his intellect wasn't the problem, but his physical strength. That's what the issue was. And so he decides to go visit the little girl's father, to face him man to man, to tell him that he couldn't save his daughter, and his daughter did pass away. Now, her father is a man named Dr. Randolph Porter, and Batman catches him working at his home on a designer drug. And when Batman tells him his daughter passed away, this guy is incredibly unemotional and just kind of brushes it off like, that's life, what you gonna do? And Batman questions the doctor about something that's been bothering him. Since this was a kidnapping, what was the ransom? Because he knows they didn't ask for money. And so the doctor shows him the designer drug that he's been working on, which is Venom, and said that they wanted some of these. And the doctor goes on to explain exactly what it is, that these pills are designed to alter the molecular structure of chemicals in the body that enhances a human's potential. And then he kind of throws it in the face of Batman, saying that if he had some of these pills earlier, that it would have given him the strength to be able to save his daughter Sissy. And he tries to get Batman to take one. And you can see for a moment that Batman is considering, but then he says he's not interested, and he throws it back to the doctor. Just then, he hears someone breaking into the house, and then gunfire erupts through the doorway, but Batman quickly takes out the attacker and runs to see if there are any more of them outside. And whoever was left outside is speeding away in a truck. Batman is able to jump on top of the truck, but due to its size and the fact that it's raining and it's wet, he's unable to maintain his grip, and he's flung off, and those bad guys are able to get away. So determined and enraged as ever, Batman heads back to Wayne Manor. He was so upset that he was unable to lift lift that boulder, he goes back, puts an obscene amount of weight on a bar and tries to deadlift it and ends up tearing his shoulder muscles. Alfred tries to reason with him to take a rest, but Batman does the Batman thing and goes back out there despite anger, injury, and fatigue and tries to go catch the kidnappers. At first, he goes out as Bruce Wayne to do some research and search for clues, but then later that night, after he figures out who they are and where they're at, he dons the cloak and proceeds as the Dark Knight. But due to his physical and mental state, he gets the drop on them at their apartment, but they are able to outmatch him, and he luckily gets away. But before they give chase to finish him off, a mysterious character pops up to tell them now is not the time for that. And Alfred, is always being the savior's savior, is able to get him out of harm's way and gives him some medical attention. But as soon as Batman wakes up, he's off to see Dr. Porter and decides to try some of those pills. Now, before we get into what happens next, this is classical behavior that we've seen many characters, many heroes find themselves in. They end up in a dark place in their lives, but the path that took them there was a road filled with good intentions. Batman's ultimate goal is to bring justice to Sissy, so he's wanting to use everything that he can to bring those responsible to justice. And we all know the arrogance of Batman. He's not going to go out, ask for help for somebody else. He's not going to call on Superman, Green Lantern, any of those other characters. This is his mess, and he's going to clean it up. And due to the fact that he's not giving himself any time to recover, he's still injured, he's still tired, and probably even more bothered since he got beat up by these two lowlives. So he chooses the path of least resistance and takes the Venom. Initially, he's surprised at how indifferent he feels, but then right away notices the results. So he goes out, finds the kidnappers, and makes lightning quick work of them by throwing one across the room and punching the other one through a plate glass window. And as he feels the satisfaction from that victory, that's when we see the addiction start to take hold, as his usual cool, calm demeanor is pulled back, and we see the maniacal laugh breaking through the surface. So fast forward 3 months, and during that 3 months, Batman has been taking these pills, and immediately we see a difference. No longer is he wearing the cowl, but he's donned this trench coat and hat getup that barely hides his face. Like how the story is with most people with addictions, he just doesn't care about the things he used to anymore. So much so that he's not even doing his own recon, he's not even doing his own research. He's just following the information that this doctor's been giving him and seeking out those criminals. He's lost his sense of justice and has become this doctor's errand boy. And at this point, Alfred's trying to convince Batman to put his costume back on. But because of the mental place these pills have put him in, Batman just shrugs it off and tells Alfred he's one of the weaklings that have allowed this city to become what it is. And hearing this, Alfred just walks off. And he doesn't just walk out of the room. At this point, he walks out of Batman's life. And Batman can care less. So Batman's next visit to Dr. Porter's house, we get to see an associate of his, a retired army officer, a man named General Slaycroft. And he wants to recruit Batman to help him with a mission that involves the nation's security. So Batman responds with, sure, yeah, I'll think about it. And he looks over to the doctor like a hungry puppy waiting for its owner to give it food. And the doctor says, oh yes, you must want some of these. And he dangles a little baggie out in front of him. But then Batman notices there's only 4 pills in the bag. I guess previously the doctor's been giving him a month's supply every time. So the doctor responds nonchalantly saying, oh, I've been so busy I wasn't able to make any more. But these should hold you off for the week, right? And Batman agrees and then mumbles about how his daughter's kidnappers are out on bail and maybe he's gonna go give them a visit. And once Batman is out of the picture, the doctor and the general are conversing. And unsurprisingly, we find out that the doctor is responsible for all that's happened. He's responsible for his daughter's death. He's the mysterious person that was in the apartment with the kidnappers, and the reason why he was working with them, because there are other various crimes that they were committing, they were using that money to finance the doctor's work. But in order for those criminals to commit more crimes to make more money, the doctor orchestrated this whole debacle with his daughter and getting Batman hooked on this drug and using Batman as his own personal weapon to hammer down all the competition that these other criminals were facing, so they'd be able to take over more territories and spread their criminal network. But now that the general is in the picture and the doctor is gaining financing through the general, there's no need for these criminals anymore, and they're quickly executed. But as Batman was leaving the doctor's house that night, he had noticed someone walking about the property, and Batman tackles him down to the ground LAPD style to find out who he is and what he's doing there. And we find out that this is actually the son of General Slaycroft. His name is Timmy, and Batman can quickly tell from the dialogue that Timmy is mentally challenged, and he makes a comment to Batman how his father is always trying to hide him away, but it's kind of a hard thing to do because Timmy actually is a pretty big guy. And Batman kind of gives him a reassurance, say, hey man, you look okay to me. So it's nice to see that although Batman is mentally and emotionally numbed, he still is able to give compassion to others who deserve it. So we find Batman doing what he said he was going to do and check on the kidnappers who are out on bail, only to find them dead, which us as the reader shouldn't be surprised because we saw in the previous pages that Dr. Porter was going to have them killed anyway. But Batman notices someone fleeing the scene, and with that venom pumping through his veins, his muscles get pumped so much that it actually rips his suit as he grabs hold of a nearby refrigerator and throws it through a brick wall, which lands directly on top of the assassin's car. And boom, Batman's on him like white on rice. And as he has the assassin in his grasp, he tells him in the most creepy way possible that he's going to tell him everything that he wants to know, but first he's going to spend some time time hurting him. And we can see by Batman's devilish smile that he means every word of it. But before he can indulge in his newfound sadism, gunshots ring out behind him, and the assassin is killed by another assassin. And this one actually gets away. So Batman decides to make his escape as well, since he hears the approaching sirens of the GCPD, which gives him the idea to go visit Jim Gordon to request the ballistic reports and any other information surrounding the murders of the kidnappers that Batman can follow up on. But right away, Jim is a little unnerved with Batman. He hasn't seen him in months. Not only that, but there's been some lunatic in a trench coat and hat causing all sorts of trouble within the city. And of course, Batman doesn't give him any information, but Jim has noticed Batman's size has increased. He's gotten more muscle. He looks bulkier. And then Batman does something he never does with Jim, and he starts asking him how his personal life is. And Jim fires back saying, hey, let's keep this all business. You never asked me about my wife or anything like that before. What's going on? And Batman backs off and apologizes and leaves his office via the window. And as he's swinging through Gotham City, we see in his inner monologue that this act once filled him with excitement and freedom, but now he feels nothing. He just says he feels like a man on a rope. And we see that reality is starting to sink in. He's starting to notice how different he is since he's been taking Venom. And as he gets back to the Batcave and he begins to lift this insane amount of weight that he's grown accustomed to lifting, he realizes he can't do it. That's because the Venom is running out of his system. And so he reaches into his coat pocket for a little pick-me-up and realizes the baggie is empty. And then he does a stereotypical junkie thing and starts flipping out and makes his way to the house of Dr. Porter and kicks down the door and demands a resupply. And as the doctor and the general know now that they have Batman under their thumb, they tell him that from now on, he's going to have to start earning those pills and getting on board with this special project that they've been working on, which is to use these pills to develop a team of elite soldiers to eradicate crime and eliminate criminals throughout the country. And they explain to Batman that they've been using him as a test subject for research purposes. And since Batman isn't thinking straight and he's starting to feel the effects of withdrawals, he agrees to help him with their plan. And so right away, they give him his next orders, and that is to kill James Gordon. Now, the reason why they want him dead is because of the investigation of the execution of those two kidnappers. Gordon has uncovered a clue that can connect the general and the doctor to those murders. Batman may be under their control, and he may not be his usual self, but he hasn't reached the point of no return yet. And so he does meet up with Gordon only to warn him that his life is in danger, and that he swears to Gordon that he's going to be going after the people responsible. So as Batman is not thinking straight whatsoever, he actually goes right back to the house where he just left to confront the general and the doctor. And as he commences to put the beat down on him, the doctor waves a bag full of pills in front of Batman's face, which completely catches his attention. And just like the fiend he's become, the doctor throws a bag into the bushes and Batman just totally lets him go, gets down on his hands and knees and searches the bushes for the fix he's been craving. And while he's doing that, the doctor and the general get away. So it's kind of interesting because we've seen Batman previously on these pills running rampant throughout the streets of Gotham, just beating down everybody that this doctor tells him to go after. And he's not just regular Batman. He's got this super strength and he's gone crazy. And it's kind of weird at this point. Like, we don't see any of that happening when it comes to the doctor and the general. Like, I know he's coming down from his high, so he's not enamored with his strength and relishing the feeling that he gets when hurting people. But it really shows how the doctor has trained and molded Batman into his little servant. Because even when Batman kicked down the door, like, that's where his violence stopped. Like, as soon as he walked in, he became the shell of himself, because whatever aggression he was feeling when he kicked the door down, like, why didn't he use that aggression on the doctor and like break his legs until he gave him as many pills as he wanted? I mean, sure, the general was there, but it's just one other guy, and Batman could have just thrown a chair at him, or I know his son was probably waiting outside again. He could have thrown some knockout gas or something like that. Like, he totally could have just ransacked the place. He could have gotten the plans. He could have gotten the equipment. He could have just, matter of fact, he could have got the doctor and just locked him in the Batcave and just forced him by gunpoint to just churn out these pills forever and ever. But yeah, we didn't see anything like that. He just becomes like this little whelp in the presence of the doctor. And that hasn't been lost on Batman, because what we see next is that Batman's coming to this point where he realizes what he's done, what he's going through, and that he needs to stop. And then we see him doing kind of like the stereotypical action that we see from a character dealing with substance abuse, where he turns the bag upside down and just lets the pills fall. I know we've seen that plenty of times in other movies and things like that, with characters suffering from alcoholism. It shows them pouring the bottle and the liquor and everything out, pours on the ground, that kind of thing. However, in this instance, I gotta say, Batman's a little irresponsible, because I'm assuming you're just dropping on the ground. Hopefully you're dropping him like in a fire or something like that, because, you know, anyone can come by and just pick up these pills and just go nuts. So the important thing is that we got the effect. So moving on. All joking aside, I really like what they did in these next few panels on this same page, because we've seen Batman, he just hit rock bottom, and so the next thing that he does is he reconciles with with Alfred. And I love the fact that we have him in a phone booth. For some reason, that just adds this extra layer of pitifulness to the scene. And not only that, but look at the way that they drew Batman holding the phone. He has the phone, but with his other hand, he's kind of gripping the telephone cord like a child would, or someone who's like really emotionally hurt, and they're clinging to that telephone cord as if it were an extension of the person who's on the other end of that line. It's an action that just screams, please save me, please help me. And then we see that single tear coming down from his eye. Now, Alfred on the other line, he's not seeing this, but Batman's communicating to him loud and clear what he's feeling and what he's going through. So of course, Alfred comes to his aid. And so Batman gives Alfred the simple plan to keep him locked in the Batcave for 30 days as he undergoes this extreme detox. And that no matter what you hear, to not let him out. Don't worry about food and water, that's all taken care of down there. And he's blocked any other exit that would allow him to escape. And with that being said, his lockdown commences. So while Batman is out of the picture for the next 30 days, Dr. Porter and General Slaycroft, they've made their escape and left the country. And where do they head to? A little island in the Caribbean called Santa Prisa. Now, I'm sure that name sounds familiar to a lot of you out there who are listening, but if it doesn't, Santa Prisa is the island where the prison Peña Duro is located, which becomes a place where Venom is perfected, also the birthplace of the character Bane. So the Doctor and the General set up shop on Santa Prisa, and they're moving their plans forward to create this team of elite soldiers. Now, Batman was a test subject, but their first real subject where they're going to invest a more potent form of Venom as well as surgical enhancements is the General's son, Timmy. And as we see, Timmy is a big guy, but he's very weak. But that doesn't stop him from gaining a little luck from the ladies, because while on the island, he gets approached by a girl named Consuela, who's taken an interest in him. And while his time there on the island, they go from being strangers to friends to something more than friends. And of course, the Doctor and the General, using everything they can to their advantage, they're going to use Consuela and Timmy's relationship to further their plans. As Timmy is continually experimented on and modified, he goes from being this tall, wiry, simple-minded, nice guy to being this hulking, muscular, aggressive beast of a man. And one day when he's meeting with Consuela, he's wanting to have her the way that he wants her, and she's fighting him back. And so Timmy just grabs her and throws her against the wall and kills her instantly. And of course, the sick-minded Doctor and General approve of the way that he acted and continue to make more soldiers like Timmy. So after they've created 4 other soldiers like Timmy, so now they have a team of 5, and they use the surrounding villages on the island to act as sort of a training ground, and they mercilessly kill the inhabitants, and they don't hold back. It's not just the men, but they kill the women as well. And these soldiers aren't yet highly trained, but they are unable to feel pain. They're incredibly strong and extremely loyal to the Doctor and the General. And as the General and the Doctor are discussing the next steps of their plan, the General has become concerned with the increased amount of intellectual enhancing drugs that the Doctor has been using, and apparently the Doctor's been using it this whole time. So that's why we see at the very beginning when Batman brings the news about his daughter to his attention, it's like he doesn't even flinch. It doesn't even really bother him. So he's been using these things the whole time, and it's been increasing his intellect, but at the same time doing something similar to what happened to Batman, where he loses his sense of morality. And the General is seeing that as a possible point of weakness in their overall plans. Now that's what's been happening during the 30 days that Batman's been locked up in the Batcave. But on the 31st day, Alfred unlocks the entrance to the Batcave and he waits. And slowly but surely, up comes a dirty, hairy, malnourished, but drug-free Batman. Now with his body and mind free of the effects of the Venom, he does the smart thing and takes time to recuperate, because obviously the detox took a lot out of him and he lost a lot of muscle mass. So he spent some time in recovery and retraining. And now that he's back to his old self, he's ready to get back into the thick of it and chase down the Doctor and the General. So now that he's put together the clues, he knows where they are. So Batman and Alfred, they make their way to Santa Prisa, but upon entering their airspace, they're actually shot down by the General, and they get separated when they have to eject from the plane. Now Batman lands in the middle of the jungle and he has no idea where Alfred is. Now Dr. Porter and General Slaycroft, they're starting to prepare for the conflict that's definitely going to happen. And they know for sure that it's Batman who they shot down, because by word that some of the villagers claim they've seen a giant bat in the jungle. So the General orders Team Venom to patrol the area and not let anyone on the property, as the Doctor prepares himself by just popping more pills. But then the General gets a call and he's pleased by what he hears, because he's just gained some leverage against Batman, who by the way is currently in the jungle looking for Alfred, but he doesn't have to wait long, because that leverage the General now has happens to be Alfred. As Batman looks up to the skies, he sees Alfred being dangled by a rope from the bottom of a helicopter. So the helicopter makes its way to the coast, and by the time Batman reaches their location, we see Alfred tied to a couple of posts just far enough away from the beach to where he can be the next meal for the local sharks in the area. And without any hesitation, Batman jumps into the water and swims out to save Alfred, and he does so in classic form by roundhousing a shark in the face and stabbing it with the same pole that Alfred was tied to, which of course this attracted other sharks, but not to worry, Batman flipped a small boat that was carrying a couple villagers in it, and those villagers became chew toys for the sharks, which gave Alfred and Batman enough time to get back to shore. Now before you think Batman Batman was being a douchebag and just murdered a couple of innocent bystanders. That is actually not the case. These guys were there from the beginning and they were watching everything go down and didn't even try to help. So in my opinion, that made them an accessory. And while back on shore, Batman did what he should have done back in Gotham and smashed his fist into the face of Dr. Porter. I'm sure he felt satisfied, but that satisfaction was short-lived as he received a giant fist to the face by Timmy Slaycroft in his final form. As Batman shakily gets up to his feet, he tries pleading with Timmy because they did share that moment outside of Dr. Porter's house where Batman was showing him compassion and he was trying to remind Timmy of who he was before this transformation happened. But those words fell on deaf ears because Timmy's pretty much a walking brick wall at this point. And the only thing Batman can do is to dodge Timmy's attacks because as Batman tries to fight back, it's not having any effect really because Timmy just doesn't feel any pain. And he overpowers Batman and manages to strangle him out. Now this is the part where the villains do that villain thing where they have the hero at their mercy and they don't kill him and they don't figure out the secret identity. They just kind of let this opportunity pass because the general is actually about to take off Batman's mask and then the doctor, just full of pride and ego, says, no, I want Batman to take off his own mask because he wants to put Batman back into that place where he was his slave and then have Batman reveal his own identity to him. But of course, as we're about to see, that doesn't happen. As Batman wakes up from being unconscious, his utility belt is gone and Dr. Porter is standing there to greet him. And he tells Batman that the only way in or out of this dungeon is through the only door in the dungeon. And to open it, he needs to pull down a hook that's attached to a chain that's fastened to the ceiling and attach that hook through the hoop on the floor. Now that will trigger the release mechanism to open up the door. But no ordinary human has the strength to pull that hook and chain down. And that over the next 24 hours, this dungeon will slowly fill with water. And then he shows Batman a bottle of Venom pills, but not like the ones he's taken. These will definitely enhance his strength, but they're even more addictive than the previous pills he was used to. So Batman has a choice. Either take the pills, escape, become addicted and enslaved, or drown. So with those options being left on the table, Dr. Porter makes his way out while being escorted by Team Venom. So Batman understands his options. Path of least resistance is to just take the pills to make his way out and maybe he can make his way off the island and once again detox himself. But being haunted by that experience and never wanting to go through that again, he decides to put his genius to work and he starts looking around him and seeing what tools and the things that he can use to make his escape. So while Batman's formulating his plan, the doctor and the general are having a meeting discussing what they're going to do next. And the general is disgusted by the doctor as he continues to take these pills, and seeing him as a liability, the general takes action, and that being tying Dr. Porter to a chair and torturing him until he gives up all the information that he has on Venom. So while all this is going on, Alfred was able to slip away while they were on the beach. He managed to get onto that little boat that Batman kicked the villagers out of and rode until he found a larger boat that actually had a radio, and he was able to communicate to Gordon back in Gotham. Unfortunately, Gordon was unable to send any help his way, but Alfred did escape. And now at this point, Batman's plan to get out, the doctor was right. No ordinary human was strong enough to open the hatch. So what Batman did, he created a platform out of the materials that was in the dungeon and tied that platform to the end of the chain and then chipped away at the surrounding bricks that made up the walls and used so many of those bricks that it made enough weight that it was able to open the door just enough for Batman to make his way through. And once he did, he ninja'd his way past some of Team Venom and made his way back into the jungle. Although his plan was to escape the dungeon, he wasn't trying to escape the island. He still needed to stop the doctor and the general. And he made it back to their home base just after Dr. Porter told the general everything he knew about creating and manufacturing Venom. And just before the general stabbed the doctor to death, Batman intervened and stopped the general. But Timmy was in the room as well. But he was in some sort of comatose state, but all that needed to happen to wake him up was for the general to give an order. But Batman was able to knock out the general before he was able to. So Batman unties Dr. Porter and he's kind of going over the scene, saying what to do next. And the recorder that the general had recorded all the information about Venom on, the doctor actually went back and found a place where there's a recording of the general saying, "Kill me." And upon playing that loudly, it woke up Timmy. And so in Timmy's mind, he's thinking that the general is telling him to kill him. And so being completely obedient, Timmy breaks his father's neck. Now all this happened before Batman was able to stop anything. So despite all of the experimentation that Timmy had gone through, once he killed his father, there was still part of him inside this beast of a soldier to where he felt sad that his father had passed. Because even though his father treated him like garbage his whole life, Timmy still loved his father. And Batman brings out the point that Timmy didn't deserve any of this. No matter how evil the general or the doctor was, and even though Timmy actually did murder a bunch of people, all of that was out of his control. So now that Batman has captured the doctor, they make their way off the island and back to Gotham. We find out that the doctor, while in custody, no longer having the drugs that he was taking, he went through extreme withdrawals and ended up suffering for a couple of days and eventually dying himself. Now as Gordon is telling Batman this, it doesn't seem to be giving Batman any satisfaction. The only thing that Batman can think of overall about this whole ordeal is the innocence that was lost in the children of the Doctor and the General, because Sissy and Timmy were just being made sacrifices by the men who were supposed to protect them. So that is the end of Batman Legends of the Dark Knight 16 through 20, Venom. Now, I really enjoyed this read. I feel that even though this is 2024 and this story was written back in the early 90s, are issues that people in the real world struggle with today, as well as being captivating plots in works of fiction. We have the larger-than-life hero falling from grace, redeeming himself, and then rising again. We see the realities with the struggles of addiction and how that can alter people's personalities and destroy lives. We can see people becoming entrapped through their vices and controlled by puppet masters. We can see the extreme evil being done by fathers to their children. And then even in the final outcome, there really is no winning. Sissy died, Timmy's this monster, the General's dead, the Doctor's dead. Batman is alive, but he's left scarred by the horrors of withdrawals when he did the detox. So it's a great story. It is a little dark and depressing, but that is something we're very used to seeing in the life of the Dark Knight. And if you haven't picked it up, by all means, go and do so. You can always get the digital copies online, but like I always say, go and support your local comic and game shops, because again, we're the only ones that go out and do that. And I really enjoy doing these videos. I really enjoy just kind of describing the story as it moves along. I really like kind of just throwing my 2 cents in there. Matter of fact, the whole idea of doing these types of videos came from just talking story with my friends and asking them, oh, have you read this issue? Have you read this? And if they say no, I'd be like, do you want me to tell you about it? Because it's awesome. And I'll either get, no, I want to read it, or yeah, sure, I'm probably never going to read it anyway. So then I just go full blast and telling this story and then telling my opinions on it. And I just enjoy doing that. That's kind of like why doing these videos is such a, I guess, such a thrill. I kind of go back and forth a little bit if I should be more of a narrative style, or I should just touch on the story here and there. But I think I'm just going to do them like this. I just like talking about it. And I think my interest and my passion kind of carries its way into the content that way, instead of just like reading a script. I am just kind of just freestyling it as I go. So I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys do, please like, subscribe, share, do all that YouTube stuff. It really helps me out as a small channel. I have so many ideas upon the horizon, and I really want you guys to be a part of that. So as new stuff comes out, you guys will be right there when it breaks. So I appreciate you guys always, and I'll see you next time.